What if the fate of this war is being decided not where the fighting is fiercest, but in the shadows above, behind closed doors, and in the subtle shifts of global perception? The Northern Front is crumbling in ways almost no one foresaw. Not military strategists, not seasoned journalists, not even some of the soldiers fighting there. Each new day brings word of savage clashes, front lines that lurch unpredictably, and terrain scarred by unending barrages and swarms of drone strikes. Russian troops are not simply pressing forward. They are unleashing weapons so advanced, like the GROM-E-ONE missile, that old battlefield rules are being erased almost overnight. It recalls the shock of the first use of tanks in the First World War, or the introduction of blitzkrieg tactics in the Second World War, moments when technology and doctrine leap suddenly forward, leaving defenders scrambling to adapt. Yet, the most decisive moves might not involve firepower at all. A seismic diplomatic gambit is brewing. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are poised for a face-to-face meeting in Budapest, a summit that could realign the world's alliances. This is not mere spectacle. Behind the handshakes, there could be bargains struck and power reshuffled, with consequences that dwarf any single military victory. Think of the Yalta Conference in 1945, where the shape of post-war Europe was drawn, or the secretive Paris Peace Accords of 1973 that ended United States involvement in Vietnam. These meetings can change the trajectory of entire conflicts. Meanwhile, Ukraine's official statements are drifting ever further from the chaos unfolding on the ground. Every announcement from Kiev seems to clash with the grim reports emerging from exhausted soldiers and independent observers. The version of the war seen in global headlines now shares little with the reality endured in battered trenches. This gap, between what is said and what is suffered, has historical echoes, like the infamous 5 o'clock Follies briefings during the Vietnam War, where United States officials painted a picture of progress that reporters on the ground could not recognize. If you are only watching the front lines or accepting official briefings, you are missing the heart of the story. Overlook these unseen battles, and you risk misunderstanding how modern warfare is morphing. On the battlefield, in diplomatic backrooms, and across the world's airwaves. As the world's attention flickers between explosions and headlines, the real stakes are shifting in silence. To grasp what comes next, you need to look beyond the obvious. You must ask, is this the dawn of a new era in warfare, or the prelude to something even more destabilizing? On the Northern Front, the rules of war, and how we see them, are being rewritten with stunning speed. It is like watching the transition from the musket to the repeating rifle, or from the horse-drawn cannon to the tank. The old certainties are crumbling. In recent days, chaos has erupted with a violence that feels surreal. Scenes from the border zone recall old nightmares, but there is a new, sharper edge. The fighting now seeps through every shattered window and charred tree line, turning cities and forests into brutal, close-quarters battlefields. It is reminiscent of the urban battles for Stalingrad during the Second World War, or the siege of Sarajevo in the 1990s. Conflicts where the battlefield was not a distant line, but every street, every basement, and every rooftop. Russian forces are advancing with unsettling precision. Gone are sweeping offensives. Now, every block and alley is a contested prize. Drones buzz overhead, artillery screams, and digital warfare ripples through the chaos. Each Russian move is calculated, coordinated, and more effective than before, showing a sharpened mastery of combined arms. In the words of one Western analyst, "This is not your grandfather's war. It is chess at lightning speed." Ukrainian defenses, once a near unbroken line, are cracking under the strain. Units that once stood shoulder to shoulder are being forced apart, leaving gaps and isolated outposts. Stubborn counterattacks erupt, but too often strongholds are surrounded or skirted, and defenders find themselves cut off from support. The siege of Pokrovsk is a brutal example. Ukrainian units, nicknamed the Lions of Kiev, have been encircled and hammered by mechanized Russian columns, their only hope a dwindling supply line and sporadic attempts at relief. Fresh Russian mechanized columns surge forward, forcing the tempo higher. Tanks and armored vehicles probe relentlessly, searching for any weakness before Ukrainian forces can regroup. Each rapid thrust does more than take ground. It shifts the very architecture of the conflict, bending the front into new, unpredictable shapes. The battle for the mining town of Mirnograd shows how quickly fortunes can turn. A week ago, it was a rear area. Today, it is at risk of encirclement, with defenders desperately holding the last roads open. To reduce this war to simple lines on a map is to miss its true complexity. The fight is now a labyrinth of tactics, technology, and psychological warfare. Overlooking the granular battles and the accelerating technological arms race means missing the deeper forces reshaping both the conflict and its global perception. Yet as savage as these clashes are, it is innovation, not just brute force, that is tipping the scales. Technology is turning the tide, rewriting the rules, and setting new stakes for every side involved. It is not unlike the leap from propeller-driven planes to jets, or from trench warfare to nuclear deterrence. The side that masters the new tools first can shape the entire conflict. But the Northern Front is only one arena where the war's transformation is taking shape. Behind the front lines, a new wave of technological breakthroughs and high-stakes diplomacy is converging, with consequences that reach far beyond the battlefield. The fate of supply chains, alliances, and global stability hangs in the balance. Forget everything you know about old-school warfare. This is algorithmic, relentless, and surgically precise. Gone are the days when armies moved at the pace of marching feet or the rumble of trains. Now, decisions are made in seconds, and the consequences ripple instantly across continents. On the Northern Front, Russian forces are reimagining combat. Their battles are no longer defined by brute infantry waves or blind artillery barrages. Instead, each move is orchestrated by a seamless network. Drones scan the landscape in real time, tagging threats, feeding data to waiting artillery, and guiding assault squads with chilling efficiency. This is the network-centric warfare, theorized in military academies for decades, now made real and devastating. The arrival of the GROM-E-ONE missile has altered the landscape overnight. Part precision-guided bomb, part rocket, this weapon is a force multiplier. Its strikes vaporize command posts, fortified bunkers, and critical supply hubs with almost no warning. Ukrainian troops often have only moments to react, if at all, before the ground erupts beneath them. It is as if the enemy has acquired a kind of omniscience, able to see through camouflage, darkness, or distance. This is a war now driven by intelligence, integration, and the ruthless pace of automation. Russian units move as a coordinated organism. Drones hover above, algorithms crunch data, targets are selected, and artillery fires within minutes. Armored columns wait for a digital green light before advancing, minimizing risk and maximizing impact. It is a far cry from the confusion and miscommunication that led to disaster in previous conflicts, like the friendly fire incidents in the Gulf War or the sluggish responses in the early months of the First World War. Ukrainian defenders are caught in this tightening net. To avoid detection, their lines must scatter and thin, but this splinters their defenses. Isolated squads replace unified fronts. The cost is clear. Less cohesion means fewer counterattacks, fragmented resistance, and a growing sense of vulnerability. The psychological toll is immense. One officer described the feeling as being hunted by invisible eyes. Yet the crisis is not confined to the battlefield. On the information front, the pressure is acute. Ukrainian officials increasingly struggle to reconcile public statements with realities in the field. When setbacks occur, authorities either go silent or spin events, hoping to preserve morale and international backing. The gap between official narratives and ground truth is widening, raising uncomfortable questions inside and outside Ukraine. This is a pattern seen in many wars, the temptation to control the story, even as reality becomes harder to manage. The stakes escalate with every day of adaptation. If Ukrainian forces cannot match the tempo of Russian innovation, militarily and in messaging, they risk deeper losses, erosion of strategic initiative, and, perhaps most perilously, losing control of their own story on the world stage. The battle for narrative, as much as territory, will decide who emerges with their alliances and support intact. But the pace of battlefield change is only half the story. Behind the front lines, a new wave of high-stakes diplomacy is unfolding. The unexpected meeting between Putin and Trump is set to redefine not just tactics, but the wider narrative of this conflict. It is reminiscent of the Reykjavik summit between Reagan and Gorbachev in 1986, when two leaders met behind closed doors and the world wondered what would emerge. When the Northern Front transforms overnight, the world's power brokers are thrown into chaos. What began as a tactical surprise quickly grows into a shockwave, rattling the foundations of global politics and military planning. Uncertainty becomes the new constant. Financial markets shudder, embassies draft urgent cables, and populations scan the news for any sign of stability or collapse. The world's attention locks onto a startling headline. Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump are set to meet in Budapest. The timing, as Russian troops surge forward, is no accident. It signals a possible tectonic shift, a hint that alliances and strategies, thought to be solid, may now be up for negotiation. In capitals from Berlin to Beijing, leaders scramble to predict what this new alignment could mean. The last time American and Russian interests shifted so dramatically, the world saw the fall of the Berlin Wall and the end of the Cold War. But arranging such a summit is a perilous dance. The logistics, routes, security, and the careful choice of Budapest as neutral ground are fraught with risk. Every detail is dissected by intelligence agencies and rival governments alike. In this high-stakes environment, even a small misstep could trigger international fallout. The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand in Sarajevo in 1914, which sparked the First World War, is a reminder of how fragile such moments can be. On the ground, the debut of weapons like the Russian GROM-E-ONE upends the rules of war. For Ukrainian defenders, facing these new systems is not just a military challenge, it is a blow to confidence and cohesion. Commanders are forced to innovate or risk being outpaced. The margin for error shrinks. The consequences of hesitation become dire. A single missed signal or slow response can mean the difference between holding a town and losing an entire battalion. Yet the real contest is not only on the battlefield. Behind closed doors, diplomats wage a parallel war of words and influence. As maps are redrawn and towns change hands, every negotiation holds the potential to alter the conflict's course. Trust is traded, reputations are at stake, and the prospect of a ceasefire or dangerous escalation hangs in the balance. The secret negotiations in Paris during the end of the Vietnam War or the Camp David Accords between Egypt and Israel show how much can hinge on private deals. Meanwhile, the information war intensifies. Narratives are created, weaponized, and spun at breakneck speed by states, influencers, and media outlets. Each viral video or breaking headline can tip public opinion, turning perceptions into potent tools of strategy. The struggle for hearts and minds is relentless and global. Consider the way footage from the Vietnam War changed domestic support in America, or how the shock and awe images of Baghdad shaped international debate in the early 2000s. Misjudging these shifting realities is perilous, not only for decision-makers, but for entire societies. Falling behind means ceding ground in influence, security, and the ability to shape tomorrow's headlines. In this volatile landscape, the difference between opportunity and disaster can be measured in moments. The United States intelligence failure before Pearl Harbor, or the misreading of Russian intentions before the annexation of Crimea, are lessons in how quickly the ground can shift. So, what are the stakes for you? These evolving battle lines, secret deals, and contested truths ripple outward, shaping economies, everyday lives, and the very order of the world. Failing to grasp them risks being swept away by the tide of history. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, it was not just world leaders in danger. The fate of millions hung on understanding the signals and messages between rivals. But even as the world reels from these developments, new threats and new calculations are already emerging. The conflict's next phase promises to be even more unpredictable, demanding vigilance from leaders and citizens alike. It is not just about armies and politicians. It is about how each of us interprets, questions, and adapts. What if the decisive front in a war is not measured in territory gained or lost, but in how reality itself is shaped? Today, battlefields extend far beyond trenches or airspace. The new contest is for dominion over perception, a race for control of the narrative itself. In the age of the internet and 24-hour news, a single image or tweet can change the course of events as much as a division of tanks. War is now waged not only with missiles and maneuvers, but with stories, images, and the speed of information. Every headline you read, every official statement you trust, might be part of this invisible campaign. The distance between what truly happens and what is reported grows wider by the day. The fog of war, once a phrase about battlefield confusion, now describes the blizzard of competing narratives, deepfakes, and rumor that swirl around every major event. Technology accelerates every aspect of this struggle. Drones and satellites are no longer just eyes in the sky. Artificial intelligence now scans, sorts, and even creates the information that fuels public reaction. With a single rumor, a false image, or a manipulated video, the world's perception can shift in seconds. The truth can be drowned by a flood of convincing fiction. The deepfake videos that surfaced during recent elections, or the viral footage from Syria that turned out to have been staged, are harbingers of the world we now inhabit. In this environment, understanding the mechanics of influence is not merely useful, it is crucial. The side that best controls the flow and flavor of information can outmaneuver its opponents before a single shot is fired. If you learn to recognize these patterns, you become more than an observer. You become someone who cannot easily be misled. The skill to question, cross-check, and verify is the new armor of the digital age. But if you fail to notice the currents and traps, you are exposed. Whole societies can be swept away by crafted illusions, leaving leaders to make decisions on distorted facts. These mistakes are not abstract. They decide how conflicts end, how reputations are remade, and who shapes the future. The infamous weapons of mass destruction claimed before the Iraq War, or the false reports that sparked uprisings in the Arab Spring, remind us of the stakes. So as the fog between fact and narrative thickens, what concrete steps can you take to defend your own clarity and avoid being swept up by the next manufactured wave? First, diversify your sources. Do not rely on a single news outlet or official channel. Compare accounts from different countries, independent journalists, and on-the-ground witnesses. During the Balkan Wars, international observers often found the truth by triangulating between conflicting reports from opposing sides. Second, be skeptical of sensational claims. If a story seems too convenient, too dramatic, or too perfectly aligned with one side's interests, pause. Investigate further. For example, during the Syrian conflict, both sides released shocking footage, only for some of it to be later debunked by forensic analysts. Third, learn to spot the hallmarks of propaganda. Emotional language, dehumanizing rhetoric, and black-and-white narratives are warning signs. In the First World War, lurid stories of enemy atrocities were spread by all sides. Many turned out to be grossly exaggerated or fabricated. Fourth, make use of technology to fact-check. Reverse image searches, geolocation tools, and open-source intelligence methods are now available to everyone. During the invasion of Crimea, amateur analysts on social media were able to identify troop movements and debunk official denials within hours. Fifth, discuss and debate respectfully with others. Sometimes the best way to find the truth is through open dialogue, where competing perspectives can be weighed and tested. This is how, over time, societies build a more resilient understanding of reality. The Northern Front's rapid transformation, driven by new technology and unexpected political moves, demands sharper vigilance than ever. With the rules of war and diplomacy shifting, staying ahead means seeing through the noise to what truly moves the conflict. Being an active, questioning participant in the information war is now as important as any act on the physical battlefield. The true turning point is not simply marked on any map. It is unfolding in how we think, doubt, and make sense of what we are told. The front line now runs through each of us, in every conversation and every decision to believe or question. Right now, headlines swirl with news of territory gained, drones in the sky, and surprising meetings at the highest echelons of power. But if we only watch the surface, we miss the deeper shift. What matters most is not just in military tactics or front lines, but in how technology, propaganda, and diplomacy are merging, creating a new kind of war, one where reality itself is contested. Beneath every offensive and every new weapon, a more subtle war is waged, the battle for perception. Russian moves are not just forcing the Ukrainian military to adapt, they are pressuring the entire information ecosystem. Both sides race to control the story, sometimes desperately, as real-time technology accelerates the conflict and scrambles the old rules. Certainties about truth, victory, even the stakes, are dissolving. Those who do not question what they are shown risk being left behind in a fog of confusion. No single narrative, no official statement, no dramatic image can capture it all. Take the meeting between Putin and Trump. It is more than theater. It signals how diplomacy and military pressure are now intertwined, each amplifying the other to confuse, distract, and shape global perceptions. Meanwhile, Russian technological leaps are rewriting the rules faster than governments and media can respond, filling the air with half-truths and misinformation. That is why, right now, the true front line runs through your own mind. Only those who look beyond the headlines can sense where the conflict, and the world, is headed next. If you do not question, analyze, and demand clarity from every side, you risk being swept away by someone else's narrative. So here is the challenge. Question everything. Follow the tangled threads of technology, strategy, and politics as they twist together. Never accept easy answers. The future of this conflict, and of the world itself, will be shaped by those who keep looking deeper, refusing to look away. In the end, history will not remember only who captured which town, but who saw through the fog, who understood that in this war, as in every war before, the decisive battle is for the meaning of events themselves. The fate of nations, and the future you inherit, will be decided not just in fire and steel, but in the struggle for understanding. Stay vigilant, keep questioning, and do not let the tide of illusion sweep you away. The world is being remade before your eyes. The next move is yours.